Union itself in jeopardy.
Prime Minister.
Can I say to my right honourable friend that I do indeed agree with him? I think a second referendum would exacerbate division in our country and would not bring our country back together again. Now, I will give way to the honourable lady, and then I will make some progress.
The Prime Minister for giving way. The Prime Minister has repeatedly referenced the 52% who voted to leave, but I'm still confused as to why she is not willing to take any cognizance of the fact that electoral law has been broken and therefore the result of the referendum cannot be trusted. Otherwise we may as well abolish electoral law altogether. Will the Prime Minister not at least respond to the findings of the Electoral Commission?
Prime Minister.
The Electoral Commission still says that they believe that it was a fair poll, and I believe that we should abide by the result of that poll and deliver for the people of this country. Mr. Speaker, we can choose to settle this issue now. I've said I'll make some progress, and then I will be generous in my acceptance of interventions. Mr. Speaker, we can choose to settle this issue now by backing the deal in this motion, a deal that delivers Brexit and a new partnership with the European Union, a deal that delivers for the whole United Kingdom, a deal that begins to bring our country back together again. I'm
very grateful to my wife for giving way. The deal that she has brought back has my full and unequivocal support. But could I just ask her to confirm this, that as we leave, our country will still be a rules-based, international, outward-looking, caring and compassionate country that stands as a beacon for good in the world.
Minister.
I'm very happy to give my honourable friend that absolute reassurance, but more than that, we will be a country that promotes those values, that promotes that rules-based international order around the world. That is what we have always done as a UK, and it is what we will continue to do. I will take two more further interventions. I'll take the right honourable gentleman.
Grateful to the Prime Minister. On the 30th of March, under the agreement, the UK will lose its place on the EU Data Protection Board, even though ministers have said they wanted to hang on to that place. It's a place where the UK has wielded considerable influence on the development of European policy. Isn't the reality about the agreement that we will continue to have to obey these rules, but we will have lost the ability to influence what those rules are?
The position in terms of voting rights and various elements once we've left the European Union, of course, is going to change. But what has been clear from the agreements that we've negotiated is the capacity for the United Kingdom to continue to give some technical support where that is appropriate in a whole range of matters. On a number of the issues which are dealt with by the European Union in terms of the rules that they operate, of course, these are not just European Union rules, they are international standards on which the United Kingdom will continue during the implementation period and beyond to have its role. I said I would take a second. I've got my honourable friend.
To be giving way. It is unfortunate for government to be in contempt of Parliament. Would she agree that it is worse for Parliament to be in contempt of the British people, which is what will happen if we do not deliver on Brexit? Thank you.
Prime Minister.
Can I say to my honourable friend, I absolutely agree that it is the duty, I believe, of this Parliament, it is the duty of us as politicians to deliver on the result of the vote that the British people gave in 2016 in the referendum. They voted, we gave them the choice, they voted to leave the EU. It is up to us to deliver that leaving of the European Union in the interests of our country. Mr. Speaker, I will make some progress. Mr. Speaker, the decision we have before us has two elements to it. The withdrawal agreement that sets out the terms of our departure from the European Union, and the political declaration that sets the terms of our future relationship. If I may, I would just make a little progress. Sets the terms of our future relationship with the EU. The withdrawal agreement ensures that we leave the European Union on the 29th of March next year in a smooth and orderly way. It protects the rights of EU citizens living in the UK and UK citizens living in the EU so they can carry on living their lives as before. It delivers a time-limited implementation period to give business time to prepare for the new arrangements. And during the implementation period, trade will continue on current terms, so businesses only have to face one set of changes. And it ensures a fair settlement of our financial obligations, less than half of what some originally expected and demanded. I will give way to my...
I thank the Prime Minister for giving way and apologise for intervening in that manner. 2 years ago, I said to the Prime Minister that I could never imagine her requesting me to vote to take away the rights of my Italian parents resident in Scotland. Can she confirm that her deal guarantees the rights of EU nationals in the United Kingdom, 3.6 million of them, as well as 1 million United Kingdom citizens in the EU 27, in a way that no deal would not?
Prime Minister.
Can I say to my honourable friend, this withdrawal agreement does indeed guarantee those citizens' rights, the rights of UK citizens in the EU and the rights of EU citizens here in the United Kingdom. And that guarantee of those rights is delivered through this withdrawal agreement. I'll take my honourable friend and then I will make some more progress.
I'm very grateful to the Prime Minister for giving way. No one can doubt her commitment to this deal and the passion with which she is selling it. She has twice referred in the early part of her statement to the status of Northern Ireland and that this is a good deal for Northern Ireland. I come from Northern Ireland, I'm a Catholic and a Unionist, I understand it pretty well. Can she explain why it is that that passion that this is a good deal for Northern Ireland is not shared by those who understand Northern Ireland the best?
Prime Minister.
Well, my honourable friend raises a point. I recognise there are those representatives who sit from Northern Ireland in this Westminster Parliament who are concerned by aspects of the deal that has been agreed. There are elements of that where it is within the responsibility of this Parliament and this Government to be able to provide some reassurance about those elements that have raised concern, and it is a matter I will wish to continue to discuss with the representatives from Northern Ireland. And I give way to the unrelated.
Thank you. I'm very grateful. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very grateful indeed to the Prime Minister for letting me intervene on her. May I just say that while the DUP have 10 MPs in this House, the DUP campaigned for leave. The majority of people in Northern Ireland, like me, campaigned for Remain. So the DUP do not speak for the majority of people I can reassure the Prime Minister that her withdrawal agreement has considerable support in Northern Ireland, particularly amongst farmers, businesses and fishermen. I'm sorry that people feel this is funny. It's not. It's really serious for the people of Northern Ireland. The issue that needs reassurance from the Prime Minister is the constitutional guarantee of the Good Friday Agreement, which the Labour Party should be proud of, which is guaranteed in the withdrawal agreement and also in the political declaration. Why the Labour Party choose to vote against it beats me, but would the Prime Minister please give a constitutional assurance to the people of Northern Ireland that nothing in this deal threatens the consent principle or the constitutional status as guaranteed in the Belfast Agreement?
Can I say to the Honourable Lady, I am very happy to give that absolute assurance to her. This is an issue that we have kept through from it was referenced in the December joint report, it's in the withdrawal agreement, it's clear in the political declaration. Nothing we will do in this relationship, in this deal that we're determining with the European Union will affect that position. We will continue to uphold the Belfast Agreement. I give way to the Leader of the DUP.
Very grateful to the Prime Minister, and of course the referendum that was held was a referendum of the whole United Kingdom. Yes. And as a unionist, I respect the referendum result across the United Kingdom. Manchester, London, Scotland, other places voted differently. Whatever way they voted, the result is that the United Kingdom voted, and that we should respect that. Can I ask the Prime Minister, obviously in terms of the views of Northern Ireland, I'm quite happy to put it to a test any time. We will happily go to the electorate and put our views to the people if needs be, and I'm quite certain that we would be returned in greater numbers than we are today. So I'm quite happy to take on the challenge that has been put down. But can I ask the Prime Minister, in terms of guaranteeing Northern Ireland's position, she will remember that in paragraph 50 of the joint report that we spent 4 days negotiating, there were guarantees given to Northern Ireland. Never mind the words that have been said in this House today. It was actually in the text. Why has that been deleted? Why has she not kept that in the withdrawal agreement? Why has it not been translated? And that is what we have a problem with. Words are good. It's the legal text, it's what's in the agreement that matters.
Prime Minister. To the right honourable gentleman that he's absolutely right, of course, that there was that reference to the consent of the Northern Ireland institutions in relation to any potential new regulatory differences between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. That is a matter that we will be looking at and can look at in this House as to the arrangements, the parliamentary arrangements between the institutions within the United Kingdom for the future. And it is exactly these issues of the question of potential new regulatory divergence that is the one that I believe it will be possible to give the reassurance to not just representatives in this chamber, but actually to the people of Northern Ireland for their future. Now, I am going to make some more progress in this debate, but I will continue to take interventions, but I will make some more progress now. Mr. Speaker, the withdrawal agreement also ensures a fair settlement of our financial obligations, as I said, but I do want to turn to the most contentious element of the withdrawal agreement. Perhaps it was a neat segue, my last intervention being from the right honourable gentleman, because I want to turn to the Northern Ireland Protocol. It's important to remember, I think, what is at the heart of the Protocol. It is our commitment to the people of Northern Ireland. It's about saying that whatever happens as we leave the European Union, as I have just said to the Honourable Lady, we will honour the Belfast Agreement. That the hard-won peace that has inspired the world and the detailed arrangements that have delivered and sustained it will not be lost. That the people of Northern Ireland and Ireland will be able to carry on living their lives as before. And to deliver that, we need a solution in the future partnership which ensures there's no hard border between Northern Ireland and Ireland. Both the UK and the EU are fully committed to having our future relationship in place by the 1st of January 2021. But there is still the possibility that it is not ready before the end of the implementation period. So the only way to absolutely guarantee no hard border on the island of Ireland at the end of the implementation period is to have a backstop in the withdrawal agreement as a last resort insurance policy. Let's be clear, Mr. Speaker, this is true not just for the deal we have negotiated. Whether you want a model like Canada's or whether you want to see the UK as a member of the European Economic Area, any future relationship will need to be negotiated and will need an insurance policy if that negotiation cannot be completed in time. Put simply, there is no possible withdrawal agreement without a legally operative backstop. No backstop means no deal.
The Prime Minister is well aware that many of us have wished her well in these negotiations, but does she understand and recognise that many of us also have concerns about the backstop and equate it to entering a contract of employment which gives the sole right of termination to the other party?
If my honourable friend will permit me, I recognise the concerns that there are in this House, and I want to go on to reference those. I'm going to go on to reference those a little later. If my honourable friend will just...
May I just very gently exhort the Prime Minister to face the House, because in answering her honourable friend can hear very well, but members on the other side can't. The Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I understand that some colleagues are worried, as I've just said, that we could end up stuck in this backstop indefinitely. In the negotiations, we secured 7 separate commitments in the withdrawal agreement and political declaration to ensure that this is not the case. First, there is an explicit legal duty to use best endeavours to reach an agreement by the end of December 2020 that avoids the backstop coming into force in the first place. This is not just a political commitment. As the Attorney-General has set out, this is a recognised approach in international law, and we have the right to seek independent arbitration if this duty is not upheld. Second, if despite this the future relationship is not ready in time, the backstop can be replaced by alternative arrangements. The political declaration makes clear that we will seek to draw upon all available facilitations and technologies that could be used to avoid a hard border, and preparatory work will be done before we leave so we can make rapid progress after our withdrawal. Third, if neither the future relationship nor the alternative arrangements were ready by the end of 2020, we would not have to go into the backstop at this point. Instead, we've negotiated there would be a clear choice between the backstop or a short extension to the implementation period. Fourth, if we do go into the backstop, the legal text is explicit that it should be temporary and that the Article 50 legal base cannot provide for a permanent relationship. Fifth, if the backstop is no longer necessary to avoid a hard border, we have the right to trigger a review through the Joint Committee. Sixth, as a result of the changes we've negotiated, there is an explicit termination clause which allows the backstop to be turned off. And finally, the legal text is now clear that once the backstop has been superseded, it will cease to apply. So if a future Parliament decided to move from an initially deep trade relationship to a looser one, the backstop could not return. But rather, I will give... Wait a moment.
I'm most grateful to the Prime Minister for giving way, and she is indeed being very generous in giving way to a lot of people. Mr. Speaker, what I would say is that as far as the backstop is concerned, we are told that the EU do not wish to exercise it. Ireland does not wish to exercise it, and certainly the United Kingdom does not wish to exercise it. Is it therefore not a case that this is not a matter of renegotiating the withdrawal agreement, but actually a matter of the European Union showing goodwill and good faith towards the United Kingdom by allowing us one additional line in the withdrawal agreement? Words to the effect that, in the event of the backstop being triggered, the United Kingdom can, say, at 3 months' notice, leave the customs union. To allow that one line would show enormous good faith and goodwill on the part of the EU and nothing else.
Prime Minister.
Can I say to my honourable friend, I recognise the degree of concern that there is about this issue. I'm going to want to speak about it in my speech further. The withdrawal agreement has been negotiated. It is clear from the European Union that this is the deal, and I just ask colleagues who wish to reopen the withdrawal agreement to recognise that were the withdrawal agreement to be reopened, it would not simply be a question of what the United Kingdom then wanted to change. It would also be a question of enabling others to change elements of that withdrawal agreement. And given the rigorous fight that we had in the negotiations to ensure that there were certain elements that were in the interests of the United Kingdom, notably around fisheries and other issues too, I caution honourable members that not only does the EU make clear that the withdrawal agreement cannot be opened, and we have agreed the deal, and the deal is there, but it is not the one-way street that perhaps honourable members would wish it to be. But I will come on to reference the wider issue. If I could finish this point, maybe it might respond to some of the comments, because I think rather than focus on the legal mechanisms we now have to avoid the backstop and ensure that if it's used it's only temporary, I think the real question the House needs to ask itself is whether it's in the EU's interest for the backstop to be used, and if it is used, for it to endure. And their original proposal for the backstop would have split the UK into 2 customs territories and given only Northern Ireland tariff-free access to their market. It barely changed their orthodoxy. It was wholly unacceptable to us. But the backstop we've succeeded in negotiating no longer splits the UK into 2 customs territories. It gives the whole UK tariff-free access to their market without free movement of people, without any financial contribution, without having to follow most of the level playing field rules, and without allowing them any access to our waters. So the backstop is not a trick to trap us in the EU. It actually gives us some important benefits of access to the EU's market without many of the obligations. And that is something the EU will want to let happen, let alone persist for a long time. I do know, and I recognise, and as has been clear from the contributions that have been made by honourable friends, that there are members of this House who remain concerned. I have listened to those concerns. I want us to consider how we could go further, and I will be continuing to meet colleagues to find an acceptable solution.
Grateful to the Prime Minister for giving way. As she confronts the inevitable contradictions at the heart of this process on behalf of the nation, is it not worth remembering that the vast majority of members, including on the benches opposite, voted to trigger Article 50 and voted for the referendum in the first place? And could I remind her that out amongst the country, her commitment to trying to pursue this is hugely admired. Given that this issue divides all parties in this House, indeed on this side it even divides the factions, would it not be sensible next week, as Parliament begins to take back control, to consider a free vote?
Prime Minister.
Can I say to my honourable friend, first of all, I think it is important that all honourable members of this House remember not only that this House overwhelmingly gave the decision on whether or not to leave the European Union to the people in the referendum. That was an overwhelming vote of this House. That this House also voted by a significant majority to trigger Article 50, to continue that process of leaving the European Union. And as I said in my remarks earlier, the fact that at the general election last year, I think about 80% of the vote went to parties who had in their manifesto a solid commitment to deliver on the Brexit vote. And I think we should all remember that when it comes to voting in the motion next week. Mr. Speaker, I will give way to my honourable friend who's been trying valiantly, and then I will make some progress.
Very grateful to the Prime Minister for giving way. Yesterday we tried to ask the Attorney General for his legal advice as to how much of the £39 billion that we were going to hand over were we legally, contractually obliged to do so. He refused to give us a specific figure. Would the Prime Minister now give that specific figure? Because when we're going to be handing over £39 billion to the European Union when we're facing shortages in our own constituencies.
Can I say to my honourable friend, there are different elements to the £39 billion in terms of the liabilities that they refer to. Of course, roughly 20 billion of that sum of money is in relation to the payments that will be made during the implementation period, which is actually about ensuring that we have the smooth and orderly exit that is good for businesses. There are other, obviously, liabilities within that where it is determined that we have legal obligations. But as I say, that part of the money, and it's 34 to 39 billion, everybody quotes the higher figure, but it's 34 to 39 billion, within that range that the final figure will come. Mr. Speaker, and I say to honourable members that I recognise we have 5 days of debate, but actually I think honourable members will want to contribute in today's debate as well, so I will make some progress. But the second part of this deal is the political declaration. Now, this is a detailed set of instructions to negotiators that will be used to deliver a legal agreement on an ambitious future relationship for after we have left. And I know that there are some members who worry that the political declaration is not already legally binding. It cannot be a legal agreement at this stage because the EU cannot legally agree a future relationship with us until we are a non-member state. But through the negotiations, we have ensured that we have the framework for an ambitious new economic and security partnership that is absolutely in our national interest. At the outset, the EU said we would have a binary choice, Norway or Canada. The political declaration concedes that there is a spectrum and we will have an unprecedented economic relationship that no other major economy has. The EU also said we couldn't share security capabilities as a non-member state outside of free movement and outside of the Schengen area. But we have secured the broadest security partnership in the EU's history. So if this deal is passed, I will give way in a few minutes to just make the progress on this point. If this deal is passed, the task ahead of us will be to turn this ambitious political declaration into our new legal agreement with the EU. I will give way to the honourable lady.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank the Prime Minister for giving way. But I must intervene at this point because she claims that this political declaration is detailed and specific. But if that was the case, why would the Treasury Select Committee told today that it wasn't even possible to produce an analysis from an economic perspective of this document because it simply wasn't specific enough?
The economic analysis that was produced by the government last week was very clear that because the political declaration has within it a spectrum where the balance of obligations in relation to the rights of access, balance of obligations on checks at the border in relation to market access has to be addressed. It's very clear that that's going to be ambitious, and we will continue to work for frictionless trade, which is indeed what was put forward in the White Paper in the summer. But it was only right and proper that in the government's economic analysis we indicated a midpoint on that spectrum, which gave an indication to people of the impact of those of trade barriers should trade barriers be put up. I give way to the Right Honourable Lady.
Prime Minister for giving way. She is being very generous. But does she not understand that by overclaiming what is in the political declaration, she is undermining trust, and she is asking for our trust in her and in the EU to determine what will happen in future because so little is resolved. So not only on the spectrum on the economics, but also on the security issues she is overclaiming. She suggested to my honourable friend that she had effectively secured agreement to SIS2. She knows she has not because she tried to get it. Paragraph 87 does not say SIS2. Instead, what it simply refers to is the parties will consider the arrangements, and if we are lucky, we will get something that approximates. That is not the same as SIS2, and she knows it. Will she be straight with the country and with Parliament about the political declaration?
What I've said this to honourable and right honourable members before, and I will say it again. There is a difference between ensuring that we have the capabilities that we need in security in the future, simply saying that we will be in a particular way, doing that in a particular way. What paragraph 87 makes clear is the intent to have exchange of information on wanted or missing persons and objects and of criminal records with a view to delivering capabilities, that is, insofar as it is technically and legally possible and considered necessary and in both parties' interests, approximate those enabled by relevant union mechanisms. I have said, no, I'm sorry. This is a fundamental issue which has underpinned the approach to these negotiations. We could have approached these negotiations by saying we are going to take the models that already exist, and we in all cases are going to say that we have to be in those models in exactly the same way as we are today. What we have said is that we look to ensure that we can have the capabilities that we have where we need those capabilities, and that is exactly what we are delivering in no, I'm sorry to the Right Honourable Lady, and that is exactly what we have got in this political declaration. So if the Honourable Lady on that point, and then I will make further progress.
To the Prime Minister, but she knows she tried to get the exact same thing. She tried to get SIS2. Be honest with the House. She should say that she tried to get SIS2 and she failed. She got other ones. Ask her to tell us whether she tried to get SIS2.
I'm sure that the Right Honourable Lady will want to be clear that she's not suggesting that the Prime Minister has been other than honest. She's presumably encouraging forthrightness, is she?
I certainly am encouraging forthrightness, and I would not challenge the Prime Minister's integrity because I know she has worked immensely hard on this. But I am asking her to give accurate information to the House. Did she try to get SIS2 rather than pretending that she was trying to get a parallel capabilities?
Prime Minister.
We are that the capabilities that are currently available to us as a member of SIS2 and as a member within ECRIS are what those capabilities are. It is still open to us to look to have the same relationship in relation to SIS2 and ECRIS as we have at the current time. but we want to ensure that it is the capabilities that underpin SIS2 and ECRIS that we do indeed. And I'm tempted to say to the Right Honourable Lady, she may like to cast her mind back to the time when I was Home Secretary and she was Shadow Home Secretary, when I was standing at this dispatch box moving the motion that ensured that we could rejoin 35 measures on justice and home affairs matters, including SIS2 and ECRIS, and she was working, I seem to recall, with my honourable friend, the member for North Somerset, to stop the government from rejoining those measures. So, you know, this is, I'm sorry, this is... Mr. Speaker, if this deal is passed, the task ahead of us will be to turn this ambitious political declaration into our new legal agreement with the EU. No, I'm going to make more progress. In doing so, I think this next section may be of interest to members of this House. In doing so, I want to build the broadest possible consensus both within this House and across the country. So for the next stage of negotiations, we will ensure a greater and more formal role for Parliament. This will begin immediately as we develop our negotiating mandate, building on the political declaration ahead of the 29th of March 2019. The Government will consult more widely and engage more intensively with Parliament as we finalise the mandate for the next phase of the negotiations. Ministers will appear before select committees between now and March in each relevant area of the political declaration, from fisheries to space to foreign policy. So members across the House will be able to contribute their expertise to the detailed positions we take forward with the EU. And the whole House will be consulted on the final version of that full mandate. And we will also provide the devolved administrations with a similar degree of detailed engagement. We will undertake targeted engagement with business and civil society to help inform our detailed negotiating positions. Taken together, I'll give way to the Chairman of the Select Committee.
Yes. She's been extremely generous in giving way. She said a moment ago that the House of Commons would be consulted on the mandate. Exactly. Can she give the House a very simple assurance that the House of Commons will get to vote on whether to approve that mandate or not?
Can I say to the right honourable gentleman, the outline of that mandate has already been set, will be set in the political declaration. That is the deal that has been agreed with the European Union. As I say, what we are looking for is to have the expertise of the House, the views of the House, when we go into that negotiating position. And as I've said, I realise to the Chairman of the Select Committee that I said ministers will appear before the Select Committee. Of course, ministers will have to be invited by the Select Committee to appear before them, but I hope that Select Committees will indeed accept that it is important for ministers to appear on these matters. Taken together, these arrangements will support a national mission to forge the strongest possible future relationship with our European partners, commensurate with our wider global goals and in the interests of the whole country. Mr. Speaker, let me turn to the amendment proposed by the Leader of the Opposition. First, it argues for a permanent customs union. The benefits of a customs union is that it means no tariffs, fees, charges, quantitative restrictions or rules of origin checks. All of these are explicit in our deal, but importantly it goes further, because it also gives us the crucial ability to have an independent trade policy beyond our partnership with the EU, which membership of the customs union would not. So the Leader of the Opposition needs to explain why he does not share our ambition for a global Britain. Second, the amendment argues for a strong single market deal. If that means being close to the single market, but not part of it, then it is our deal which delivers the closest possible partnership. If it actually means being in the single market, then he is opposing taking back control of our borders and ending free movement. And that not only contravenes the democratic instruction of the British people, it contravenes his own manifesto. Third, the amendment claims our deal would, quote, lead to increased barriers to trade in goods and services. Unless his policy is to stay in the single market as well as a customs union, then some increase in barriers is inevitable. But it is our deal that is the best deal outside the single market and which gives us the opportunities that come from an independent trade policy and increased regulatory freedom. We are now at the stage in this process
I'm very grateful. As the UK will have lost the ability to influence EU rulemaking on financial services directly, it's vital that we can play a full part in defending our interests in international bodies that set standards globally, such as the Basel Committee and IOSCO and others. Does she therefore share my concern that Article 129 of the draft treaty, which clearly states that the EU may not take a contrary position to the EU in such bodies, will prevent us from doing so?
I think Article 129 that I'm looking at in this matter actually is about the joint committee responsible for the management, administration and supervision of the dispute resolution in the future. So, yes, that's... Oh, well, he's... But I say to the honourable gentleman, no. We have been very clear in the area of financial services. We've been very clear in the area of financial services that it is important, because of the significance of financial services to the United Kingdom, that we are able to ensure that we have that ability to set those regulations that we need to set as a global financial centre, working with the other bodies in terms of the regulatory, other regulatory bodies, and doing that in the interest not just of the United Kingdom, but in the interest of financial stability across the world. We are now at the stage, Mr. Speaker, in this process we must all engage with the hard choices we face. Simply pretending everything can stay the same as we leave the EU, as Labour's amendment does not face up to these hard choices and amounts to not being straight with the people of this country. Fourth, the amendment claims our deal would not protect workers' rights and environmental standards. This is simply wrong. Our deal does protect them. As part of the single customs territory in the Northern Ireland Protocol, we've committed to ensuring there will be no reduction in standards in this area, including on labour and social protection, fundamental rights at work, occupational health and safety and fair working conditions. And we have said we will improve on this in developing our future relationship with the EU. Indeed, we already go further than EU minimum standards, including on annual leave, paid maternity leave, flexible working, paternity leave and pay, and parental leave. For we know that the first responsibility for protecting those rights sits with this Parliament. And as we take back control of our laws, we will not only honour that responsibility but go further still, including, for example, by implementing the recommendations of the Taylor Review. So not just protecting workers' rights, but enhancing workers' rights. Now, fifth, the amendment claims our deal allows the diminution of our security. Now, the Leader of the Opposition knows full well that if we fulfil the democratic decision of the British people to leave the EU, we cannot have exactly the same rights as a third country that we currently have as a member. So the question is, which deal represents the broadest security partnership in the EU's history? And that is our deal. But what is he doing it? He is opposing it. Sixth, his amendment appears to reject the backstop, even though businesses, farmers and people from across the community in Northern Ireland, as we heard earlier, support this insurance policy. And I think there is real anger in Northern Ireland at the approach that Labour are taking. Finally, the amendment opposes leaving without a deal. But the EU has been crystal clear that no backstop means no deal. So his amendment is simultaneously opposing no deal and proposing a policy that would lead to exactly that. So I have to say that at this critical moment in our history, the Leader of the Opposition is not making a serious proposition for the future of this country. He is simply trying to force a general election. And the Right Honourable Member for Hayes and Harlington has admitted it when he said, and I quote, "Our view is we should have a general election." At a time when we should be delivering on the vote of the British people, the Leader of the Opposition wants to ignore that and have another vote. At a time when government is working in the national interest, the Leader of the Opposition is playing party politics. And at a time when we should all be focused at this historic moment on what is best for our country. The Leader of the Opposition is thinking about what gives him the best chance of forcing a general election. Mr. Speaker, let me now turn to the amendment from the Right Honourable Member for Leeds Central. This also seeks to reject our deal as well as to reject no deal. But this House cannot unilaterally rule out no deal. The only way to avoid no deal is to agree a deal, and that requires the agreement of this House and the European Union. And if... No, I'm good. I have been very generous with my intervention. I will take some further interventions in a few minutes, but I will make this point. If you reject what the other side have described as the only deal on offer, then whatever you say to the contrary, you put this country on course for no deal. And this is doubly so. This is doubly so. This is doubly so when the amendment is silent on what alternative deal we should strike. The EU 27 member states have made it clear that this is the best deal available and that there is neither the time nor the inclination to reopen negotiations and ensure we leave in good order on the 29th of March next year. The choice before Parliament is clear. This deal, no deal, or the risk of no Brexit. And I will just in a couple of minutes. And investing parliamentary time in seeking to create an alternative to these choices will only endanger our ability to deliver Brexit at all. I can wait to my honourable friend.
I'd like to thank the Prime Minister for giving way and congratulate her on 2 years of the trickiest negotiations in our lifetime. Some of my colleagues in this House seem to think that if they reject this deal on Tuesday, the other EU 27 leaders will come back and give us something better. Why should they?
I think my honourable friend raises a very important point. Exactly, and they certainly don't intend to do that. They have made very clear in relation to this deal that this is the deal on the table. I give way to my honourable friend.
Thank the Prime Minister. I welcome the Prime Minister's commitment to engage further with select committees. What she will have heard when she came to the liaison committee last week was one committee chair after the other pointing out to her the catastrophic consequences of no deal and asking if she would rule that out if and when this House rejects the deal, because we cannot inflict that kind of catastrophe on our people.
The Honourable Lady, the way to ensure, if she is concerned about no deal, the way to ensure there is no deal is to support the deal that is on the table. I will give way one more time to the honourable gentleman who's been trying several occasions.
I'm extremely grateful to the Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, this feels like the fall of the Ancien regime this afternoon. But can I take her back to what I think was meant to be? Can I take her... No, I think he was there. Can I take her back to the bit that I think was supposed to be the Scotland part of this speech on devolved administrations? What the Scottish Parliament will not be interested in is ministers making day trips for a number of hours to Scotland to come over with meaningless waffle. If we are to be convinced that their views will genuinely be taken into account, what will change, because they haven't been up until this point?
The honourable gentleman knows full well we have had a high degree of engagement with the Scottish Government and indeed with the Welsh Government on all of the matters as we have been going through. We will continue to have that high level of agreement, engagement. There are areas where there is a disagreement. The Scottish Government wants to remain in, ideally, I think the Scottish Government wants to remain in the European Union. That would deny the vote of the British people. That would deny the vote of the British people. So we do have a difference of opinion on that. Let me now deal with another question that has been raised. Which is the question of another referendum. I understand the argument that if this House is deadlocked, we could give the decision back to the British people. But I ask the House to consider what that would say to those in our constituencies who put aside decades of doubt in the political process because they believed that their voice would finally be heard. What it would say about the state of our democracy if the biggest vote in our history were to be rerun because a majority in this House didn't like the outcome. And what it would do to that democracy and what forces it would unleash. This House voted to give the decision to the British people. This House promised we would honour their decision. If we betray that promise, how can we expect them to trust us again? And even if we held a referendum, what would it achieve? It wouldn't bring the country together, it would divide us all over again. It wouldn't end the debate, because if it was close like last time, then whichever side lost out would soon start to call for a third one. And it wouldn't take us forward, but rather back to square one. We cannot afford to spend the next decade as a country going round in circles on the question of our relationship with the European Union. We have already spent too many years with divisions on Europe simmering in the body politic. We must deliver on the referendum we have already had, focus on the day-to-day concerns of the people, and take this country forward.
I thank the Prime Minister so much for her generosity. Our youngest child has just gone to university, Prime Minister. Could she give assurances that when he comes out, he will walk into a world where he can make his way in this world and in this country? Could she give assurances that this government will have the ship back on track, that we will have respected the democratic view of this country, we will have trusted the people as we expect them to trust us, but we will also respect the European Union, we will have close relationships with that great trading bloc, but we will also be able to hold our head up on the global worldwide stage so that we will not be diminished, Prime Minister, we will be even greater.
Thank you. I thank my honourable friend. She may have anticipated what I'm just about to say in my speech. I can give her absolutely that assurance, because I want to be clear what this deal delivers for the country. An end to free movement once and for all. An end to the jurisdiction of the European Court of Justice in the United Kingdom. An end to those vast sums we send to Brussels every year. A fair settlement of our financial obligations, less than half. No. I am conscious that I have now been speaking and taking interventions for an hour. There are many members of this House who wish to contribute to this debate, and I will make progress. A new free trade area with no tariffs, fees, quantitative restrictions or rules of origin checks. An unprecedented economic relationship that no other major economy has. And at the same time, the freedom to have an independent trade policy and to strike new trade deals all around the world. This deal means being out of EU programmes that do not work for us. Out of the common agriculture policy, out of the common fisheries policy as an independent coastal state, once again, with full control over our waters. It means jobs protected, citizens' rights protected, the integrity of our United Kingdom protected, the sovereignty of Gibraltar protected, our security protected, with the broadest security partnership in the EU's history, working together with our friends and neighbours to keep all our people safe.